My fiance put up a pillow barrier in our bed and won't take it down. Okay, I'll make it clear that I can recognize that I'm going to come off as bonkers in this post, but let me try to explain the whole thing. This problem goes back, way back. I'm almost 38, so is he. We're only 3 weeks apart. I'll call him Caleb for this post. Caleb and I met when we were 14 years old in drama club at a Catholic high school, so we have a lot of history. We have been together for 17 years, though we have known each other for 24 years. We're also getting married in 2 weeks, but that's not really relevant here. I have been a terrible sleeper all my life. It started back in high school when my family moved to another city, and my room ended up being in the basement. I got used to sleeping in complete darkness and silence and being more comfortable on the colder side. Every sleeping situation I've had to deal with since then has been a downgrade in some way, whether it's too bright, too warm, or too noisy. I also hate the feeling of my skin touching itself, so I wrap my sheets around every limb, even between my fingers, to keep everything separated. Over the years, I've had to adapt to this by using the highest noise reduction rating earplugs I can find, putting up blackout curtains all over the windows, and keeping the AC set to 66 degrees Fahrenheit or lower. I also buy oversized sheets to allow for the extra fabric yardage that I need to keep my skin from touching itself. It's still not perfect, but it works for the most part. Of course, that means Caleb, as well as any exes, have had to deal with my insanity as part of the package of being with me. I recognize I'm lucky to have landed a man at all, trust me, and even when my sleeping terms have been met, I'm still not always a polite sleeping partner. An ex once described my behavior as like a corpse in a washing machine. He was so frustrated that he also took a video of my antics one time to show me what I'm like, and honestly, his description was accurate. A couple years ago, Caleb finally had enough of my crap and suggested that we get separate duvets. We had a lot of Scandinavian friends for some reason, and I guess they told him that it's normal for couples in their part of the world to have their own duvets. So he brought this up as a way to help bring some peace to our bed. I was a little sad since it would cut into cuddle time, but I agreed. At the time, we were sharing a full-sized bed since that's all we could fit into our tiny New York City apartment, and we still slept pretty close to each other, so it wasn't so bad. We have since moved out to the suburbs and are enjoying a much larger living space and are now sharing our first king-size bed. While the upgrade has been great, it feels like I'm sleeping on another continent from him. Ever since getting our new bed, he has been so much happier. He won't shut up about how much better quality sleep he's getting. Whatever, it's fine. A couple of weeks ago though, he decided to add a new feature to our bed. He stacked these 2 long pillows on top of each other and put them between us like a stupid pillow barrier or something. I can't help but feel a little offended that my own fiance doesn't want to even look at me while we are in bed together. I told him I hate the barrier and I've knocked it over multiple times, but he just puts it back up each time and tells me it's here to stay. Caleb claims it 1. Serves as protection from my violent flailing limbs, 2. Acts as a sound barrier because evidently I also talk a lot in my sleep and sometimes I scream, and 3. Blocks some light that seeps in from our bedroom door that we have to keep open because otherwise our giant German Shepherd will lose her mind and make a scene. Last night, I punched the top pillow on the barrier so hard, the pillow flew across the room and Caleb had to get out of bed to reassemble the barrier, which really annoyed him. He wouldn't talk to me about any pillow barrier related topic for the rest of the night. Should I just drop it and accept this stupid pillow barrier as a part of my life now? I don't know my alternatives besides a straitjacket and maybe some type of face muffler. And for anyone wondering, we're still in love with each other, and I'm not concerned about the integrity of our relationship. The sex is still great, and that hasn't changed. We don't really fight or argue about anything, ever. I can't even remember the last time that we got into a serious disagreement. On the spectrum of severity of relationship advice posts, I agree this is dumb. I don't think anyone's particularly wrong in this situation. I feel like you just can't sleep together properly. And in this case, a lot of people just don't sleep in the same room and they do their own thing, and that's completely fine. Obviously, there is a lot of people that can't do that and they need someone else to sleep with in order to fall asleep properly, and it sounds like that's kind of you. But at the end of the day, you have to have compromise in relationships, and you have to find what works for the both of you. Obviously, on the spectrum of severity of relationship advice posts, yes, this is dumb, but I don't think that discounts the problem at all, and I think this is something that can snowball out of control if not managed properly. And now in the comments, there are many couples that do quite well sleeping in separate rooms. Raises hand. I need complete darkness and nothing but white noise. Also, I'm a light sleeper. My husband needs the background of a TV running, sleeps like a log, but then gets up at like 2 to 3 a.m. to do some of his hobbies. And he snores loudly, which will also keep me up. We simply cannot share a bedroom most days, vacations excluded, and it's just fine. Much better for the last 12 years of cohabitation than trying to adjust to each other's sleep needs and habits. Same setup here, except I'm the one who talks in my sleep and snores like a freight train, so my husband takes another room with the TV. Plus, I run hot and he runs cold, so we could never agree on temperature. I find it odd that you think it's perfectly fine to have a lot of interventions in place for you to be able to sleep, but you protest at his own interventions so that he might sleep better. It sounds like you were very difficult to sleep with. He just wants to get some rest, which you are taking very personally. Quite a double standard. OP, this right here is what you need to pay attention to. Your partner needs to sleep too, and you're coming off as super selfish by dismissing his needs completely. Honestly, if I were Caleb and my future wife who cocoons herself in sheets gets offended by my pillow barrier, I'd sleep in a separate room. The fact that he wants to marry you with all your crazy sleep crap is astounding. You have so many things set in place that must be done in order for you to get sleep, and I'm assuming that he respects that. He has a couple little things that help him sleep from all your crazy sleep crap, and you get your feelings all hurt and want to stop him from doing them. You sound unfair and selfish in that regard. If I were him, I would have kept the full-sized bed, got another full-sized bed, and had us sleep on separate sides of the room. But instead, he decided to be nice and just get a king with a pillow barrier. And now back up to the post, there is an edit. Okay, I get it. I'm a selfish monster and a deeply flawed, horrible person. I showed him the post and he got a good laugh out of me getting roasted. He appreciates your concern over his future following our upcoming marriage ceremony. From this day, the pillow barrier will forever go unharmed. I'm not out to ruin the guy's life. I just love when he holds me in his arms and the barrier gets in the way of that. Thanks all. And now, onto the update. Hi Reddit. I'm giving an update since a bit has happened since my post, and I thought it might be an interesting update for anyone who remembers. I'm the crazy person who received a swift and unified response from Reddit that I was wrong in the situation. I can't link my post because it was locked and then removed, but long story short, my fiance, now husband, had constructed a pillow barrier between us in bed. This was an escalation after he had requested we use separate covers. To this poor man's defense, it's because I'm a horrible person to sleep with. I'm violent and I talk, cry and scream at least a few nights a week. While the pillow barrier initially hurt my feelings because I love him and our cuddle time, the feedback I received was to not be so selfish and let the man do what he can to get his sleep. Some of you were kinder than others in packaging this response, but pretty much everyone agreed. There were a few posts, though, that mentioned that the sleeping troubles I have, oversensitivity to light, sound, heat, touch, sounded like a sensory processing disorder and suggested that I was autistic. It was hard for me to really consider that, given how old I am, 38, and would have hoped that it would have been caught by now. I'm no stranger to psychiatrists or therapy. Well, I started reading up on adult autism, and as I was reading typical symptoms, I swear my jaw was gaped open. All of these things I assumed were just quirks or otherwise unrelated characteristics of my personality were all strung together under one diagnosis. Sometimes being so nervous about when to speak up that when I end up not saying anything at all. I went 3 months after starting this new job without saying a word during meetings, and then crying afterwards because I thought I was stupid and didn't deserve the promotion. Difficulty coping with change, went into a deep depression after a new job, after engagement, after we bought a house, sensitivity to light, sound, smell, touch. I hate being touched or hugged by anyone other than my husband. Embarrassingly, I do make a lot of weird sounds and voices. I just thought that I was a little quirky, but I guess it's deeper than that. The thing that got me were autistic meltdowns. The entire reason I ever sought out therapy was because there were so many occasions where I honestly could not control my words or actions, totally blinded by emotion. I assumed this was some degenerate characteristic I inherited from my abusive father. Luckily for me, the worst it's ever come out has been as a snippy email or a bitchy interaction at work. Nothing to breach professionalism, but still, these things would get me so worked up they'd consume me. I'd fixate on it for hours, sometimes days. Most times I wouldn't have an outburst, but keep it inside and be filled with a blind rage so strong, all I could do was hold my head and cry and wait for it to be over. I'd write scathing emails to people and then delete them, make up imaginary conversations where I really let them have it, and in general just stewed in my anger. It was so bad sometimes, I'd just shake and hold myself in my office to try and calm down. I started meeting with a psychiatrist to control that, which has been successful so far, I'm happy to say. Well, anyway, I told my therapist about all of this, and he referred me to a specialist, a child behavior specialist. It was a little embarrassing sitting in a waiting room designed for kids as a 38-year-old, but life goes on. We spent a while talking, and she asked a lot of questions, but ultimately decided that my behaviors and thoughts are consistent with ASD. It's rocking my world, and a lot of my self-esteem, but at least it explains a lot. She mentioned there's a couple of medications that could help my symptoms, but I'm already on Wellbutrin and Xanax, and in regular therapy because of trauma I experienced and witnessed at a young age. My husband has been completely unfazed by all of this, at least. From his perspective, even if it's a new label for me, I've been able to piece together a decent life. I make good money working in a senior leadership position in a healthcare organization. I don't have many friends, but I do have a few. I love him more than anything, and with the help of my therapist, have spent the last year working on ways to show him how much I care and be a more present and loving partner. So there you go. Yes, I'm batshit crazy as many of you confirmed, but now I'm apparently autistic too. Oh, and the pillow barrier still stands. Thanks Reddit, I guess. And now in the comments, OP, he already knows you. This is just a label for a part of who you are, which he already knows. So you shouldn't be surprised that this isn't phasing him. Like if you were eating an ice cream flavor and liked it but didn't know the name, knowing the name doesn't change you liking it. Yeah, I'm pretty sure the first thought in his head was, sounds about right. And OP replies, yeah, pretty much. Don't feel bad about the child behavior specialist. I had to see one as well at 38, got diagnosed ADD. Made necessary changes to my life, and I am doing much better. I'm 68 years old, and it was only 5 years ago that I was finally diagnosed with being on the autism spectrum. Now my sensory overload issues make a heck of a lot of sense. I never understood why I couldn't live with someone. It's because I could never relax. I'm autistic, suffer from PTSD, a lot of things give me sensory overload. I remember telling one partner that I just needed some time to myself, and he kept whining that it meant I didn't love him. I told another partner to just find a damn coloring book and get out of my face for about 2 hours. I could never understand why I couldn't go to the movies without feeling disoriented, not being able to drive after I left the movie. I could never understand why I couldn't go to a party and stay for more than a couple of hours. I could never understand why I couldn't have company until 11 at night, and then it took me hours to be able to wind down and go to sleep. Once you fully understand how your brain works and what's going on, it's easy to adjust and ask what you want in relationships. It's easier now for me to just explain to people that I feel overloaded and I need some quiet time. And I don't feel guilty about it anymore. And OP says, I just always assumed I was a strong introvert and needed time to recharge when I guess what I was experiencing was some type of sensory overload. When I was younger, I lived in Manhattan, and there were some nights out with friends and coworkers where something in me would just snap at some point in the night, and I'd have this anxious pressure forcing me to get the hell out and go hide in my quiet UES studio. I don't know. Just a lot of the ways that I've reacted to things in my past are starting to make a little more sense. Our next post is titled, "My father and stepmother died, leaving me, 19 male, and my stepsister, 8 female. My stepsister's father, who has previously never cared about her, is getting full custody and has told me he won't allow me to visit. Is there anything I can do?" Hi, so my life is falling apart. As the title says, a few weeks ago, my father and my stepmother were killed in a car accident. They have been married for 7 years, and my stepmother had a daughter from a previous marriage who was 8 years old. I love her unconditionally, as if she were my own sister, and I would fight tooth and nail to keep her safe. She has no immediate family other than her father in the area, so he's going to receive full custody of her. I don't know if subjective opinions are allowed in posts like this, but this guy is an effing asshole. The reason my stepmother left him is because he was abusive, which was never reported to the police, but I know several people who have witnessed it firsthand, so it absolutely 100% happened. And the reason he was abusive was because my stepsister was born and he didn't want a child. As a result, he has never given a crap about her, never asked to see her, and has never wanted anything to do with her until now. I was at home with my stepsister a few days ago, and he knocked on the door. I opened it, and we had a really ugly conversation about what was going to happen to my stepsister now that her mother and my father were dead. I told him that if he did end up having custody, I would want to be seeing her as often as possible, as I consider her my family. He told me verbatim, "That's not gonna happen, son. I don't want my daughter spending time with half-caste blood." He's referring to the fact that my father is mixed race, and that I am too as a result. I slammed the door. I was absolutely livid, which brings me to this post. So basically, I have a few questions. First, can anything be done to stop him having custody? There are no police reports about his abuse, and his criminal record is clean by all the research I've completed. Second, at the very least, could I contend in a court that I have visiting rights to her? I'm not actually related to her, so I'm not sure what the standing is there. And third, if it's not possible to force allowed visits, is there any way I can straight up adopt my stepsister? I have an office job that pays well, so financial security wouldn't be a problem. I have an apartment of my own, and I would be 100% willing to be her full-time guardian. And edit, I want to make it absolutely clear that my sister does not want to live with her dad, and she says she wants to live with me. Thank you so much to anyone who responds to this. I'm at my wit's end, and I will do literally anything to keep my stepsister close to me, and I don't care about the cost. And now in the comments, I went through a similar situation when I was your age, and did get full custody of my little sister. Please call a family law lawyer, and they can help you navigate this. Don't hand over your sister to her dad, as he might be able to take her legally from you since the previous parenting plan wouldn't protect that from happening. Ask the lawyer about filing an emergency temporary parenting plan so you can have custody of your sister until this is all sorted out. Make sure your sister's school knows what's going on, and the school paperwork does not allow her dad to take her out of school. Also, call your local court and ask about legal aid services in your area, as some attorneys will take a case like this pro bono, so you won't have to pay anything. Good luck. Since your sister is under 18, she's entitled to Social C benefits until she turns 18 at least. If your stepmom ever worked, your sister will be getting a monthly or bi-weekly benefits check, which I'm sure her father is aware of, and likely is a significant amount of money over the next 8 years. Can that money be deposited into a bank account until she turns 18 that the father can't touch? If the father gets custody, he would be allowed to use the money for her expenses, sort of like child support. It's possible to set things up so that the inheritance goes into a trust for the child that's overseen by someone other than the parent/guardian. OP should talk to an estate lawyer about it. The trustee would still have to approve reasonable expenses for the child's care, but the father wouldn't just have free rein to bleed the account dry. It might be relevant if your father legally adopted your stepsister. If her father did not have any custody or visitation, he might have agreed to that to get out of child support. Is it possible he only wants custody to get his hands on part of some inheritance that might be coming your sister's way? I thought about the inheritance, but I'm aware of a rough figure, and it honestly isn't a whole lot. Although my sister's father doesn't know that, so he might be thinking it's a lot of money. And now, onto the update. So after one of the most stressful months of my life, I can happily tell you all that I got custody of my stepsister. I did as many of you suggested and got a family lawyer who was one of the most kind and helpful people I have ever met in my life. I told her the circumstances of my stepmom and dad's death through tears and sobbing, and then she told me she would do everything she possibly could to help me. After my stepsister's bio dad was informed that I would be trying to get full custody, he basically folded within hours. The lawyer told me that it wouldn't have mattered anyway though. She said that because he hadn't visited her for such an extended period of time, that it was considered abandonment in the eyes of the law, and the likelihood of him specifically getting custody was unlikely because of this. After her bio dad said he didn't want my stepsister, I then spent weeks and weeks filling out the right papers and seeing the right people. I have never signed so many things in my entire life. Because my stepsister had no biological family other than her craphead dad, I was given custody on a silver platter, according to my lawyer. Her bio dad didn't ask for visitation rights, and it appears he didn't even care in the first place. He just wanted my stepsister for no reason other than to further upset me. Yesterday, I signed the last piece of paper that confirmed that I had 100% custody of my stepsister. After I signed, we both cried and cried for hours. We are both working on processing the death of her mom and my dad. As I write this, she's asleep next to me with her head on my shoulder. The past 2 months have hands down been the worst of my entire life. I consider meeting my stepsister the best thing that has ever happened to me, and adopting her is the single best decision I have ever made. These events have made me realize that family isn't just DNA-based, it's actionable investments in the life of someone you love. Thank you so much for all of the people who helped me in my first thread. I owe all of you for the rest of your lives. Once I turn 21, if any of y'all are in the Aberdeen area, drinks are on me. I hope you all lead wonderful lives. Give your loved ones a big hug for me. And now in the comments, POS father probably backed down as soon as he understood that he would have to put in a little effort to get custody. I'm happy for OP. I'd be willing to bet he thought that he'd somehow inherit the daughter's portion of OP's parents' will/estate. I didn't think of that, but I bet you are absolutely right. He thought she was going to come along with an insurance policy. A 19-year-old making a decision that many adults couldn't or wouldn't make. I am rooting so hard for him, as I can only imagine the challenges he faces, not to mention the challenges his stepsister faces too. My brother-in-law adopted his younger brother, who was in middle school at the time, after their parents died, dropped out of college to get a full-time job with benefits to provide for him, spent his full inheritance buying a house for them, but never touched his brother's share of the money, got his little brother through college, and then finally went back to finish himself. His brother is doing great now with a family of his own, and it's all thanks to my brother-in-law's huge sacrifices. Edit to add, the inheritance was the insurance payouts from the death of both parents. He used it to put a down payment on a modest house for him and his brother and my sister. They were just dating at the time. I have to give my sister credit here too. She helped raise her now husband's younger brother as well. I went to his extracurricular activities, helped him with his schoolwork, etc. The brother did get scholarships to college, used his insurance payout money wisely, and is now doing great in life. This is so lovely. I'm really wondering what the end game of the bio dad was though. If OP hadn't put up a fight, he'd have ended up with the daughter, which he clearly didn't want, seeing as he never visited her or had anything to do with her, so what exactly would he have won? It just feels like a lot to do to upset OP or take one final swipe against his ex once she was dead. Feels like it would have been a Pyrrhic victory. And that's where I'm going to end today's episode, guys. I do hope you enjoyed it. If you did, let me know what you thought of it down in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye.